Emperor Zarthon stood before the great holographic display in his throne room, staring at the impossible reports that kept arriving from the Outer Rim systems. Admiral Kree-Yan's entire war fleet had been destroyed by a single human ship. 50 of the Empire's finest vessels, commanded by one of their greatest military leaders, had been reduced to floating debris in a matter of hours. The Emperor had ruled for over 2 centuries, and in all that time the Zephyrian military had never suffered such a devastating defeat. Individual ships had been lost in battles, and small fleets had occasionally been damaged in difficult campaigns, but nothing like this had ever happened before. The humans had accomplished something that should have been impossible. News of the defeat was already spreading through Imperial space despite attempts to suppress it. Conquered worlds that had been quiet for decades were suddenly showing signs of unrest. Species that had accepted Zephyrian rule as inevitable were beginning to whisper about rebellion and freedom. The foundation of Imperial power was fear, and that fear was starting to crack. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, watching his communications officer prepare the message that would change the galaxy forever. Amy had been working for hours to translate the broadcast into every known alien language, making sure that every species in Imperial space would understand what humanity was offering them. Captain, the message is ready for transmission. We'll be broadcasting on all frequencies that the Empire uses for official communications. Every world in their space will receive it. Jake nodded and gave the order that would make Earth the enemy of the largest interstellar power in known history. Send it out, Amy. Let the galaxy know that humanity stands with anyone who wants to be free. The message that went out across space was simple, but powerful. Captain Morrison identified himself as a representative of the human species and offered alliance to any world that wanted to throw off Imperial rule. He promised that Earth would provide military support to any species willing to fight for their independence. More importantly, the message included detailed technical information about Zephyrian military weaknesses that Helen had discovered during their battles. Amy broadcast the frequencies that could disrupt alien shield generators and the tactics that had proven effective against their fleet formations. Humanity was sharing their knowledge freely with anyone who could use it. Emperor Zarthon watched his empire begin to crumble as the human message spread from world to world. The technical information in the broadcast was accurate and devastating, revealing weaknesses in Zephyrian military technology that had never been discovered before. Worse, it was being transmitted in the languages of dozens of conquered species. On the mining world of Kelthera, the enslaved Draknari people received the human message and began planning their first rebellion in 50 years. The technical data about Zephyrian shield frequencies would let them modify their industrial equipment into weapons that could punch through Imperial defenses. The ocean world of Marileth saw its dolphin-like inhabitants organize a coordinated uprising that struck Imperial installations simultaneously across 3 continents. They had been conquered by Zephyrian forces 20 years earlier, but they had never forgotten their desire for freedom. Colonel Hayes led reconnaissance missions to nearby Imperial worlds, gathering intelligence on Zephyrian defenses and making contact with potential resistance movements. His small teams of volunteers were risking everything to help coordinate rebellions across multiple star systems. On each world they visited, the human scouts found species that had been waiting decades for a chance to strike back against their oppressors. The technical information in Captain Morrison's broadcast was already being put to use. As enslaved populations modified mining, equipment and construction tools into weapons that could threaten Imperial forces. Ryan Cole worked around the clock with Dr. Carter to reverse engineer captured Zephyrian technology and improve human defensive systems. Every piece of alien equipment they studied revealed new insights into how the Empire's military technology functioned and how it could be defeated. Captain, we're learning incredible things about their technology. Their entire civilization is built around energy manipulation, but they've never had to face opponents who use different scientific principles. We can stay ahead of them as long as we keep innovating. The rebellion was spreading faster than Imperial forces could contain it. Worlds that had been quiet for generations suddenly erupted in coordinated uprisings that targeted Zephyrian military installations and government centers. The Empire's response forces were stretched thin trying to maintain control. Emperor Zarthon called emergency meetings with his military commanders and planetary governors, but none of them had solutions for the crisis they were facing. The Empire's military doctrine was designed to fight other energy-based civilizations, not the kinetic weapons and electromagnetic pulse systems that humanity used so effectively. Kate Phillips intercepted increasingly desperate communications between Imperial worlds as the rebellion spread. Zephyrian commanders were reporting that their weapons were ineffective against rebel forces using human-designed tactics and modified equipment. The Empire's technological superiority was proving to be an illusion. Admiral George Bennett arrived in the system with 20 human dreadnoughts, each one as powerful as the Leviathan. The sight of the Earth fleet emerging from hyperspace sent shockwaves through Imperial intelligence networks. Humanity had not just built one advanced warship, but an entire fleet of them. The Human Reinforcement Fleet was a masterpiece of engineering and military planning. Each dreadnought carried the same adaptive armor and kinetic weapons that had made the Leviathan so effective, but they also had improvements based on combat experience and captured alien technology. Jake felt enormous relief as he watched the Earth fleet take up defensive positions around the Leviathan. For weeks, his single ship had been humanity's only presence in deep space, carrying the entire weight of first contact with an alien empire. Now he had support, and the galaxy would see that Earth was serious about defending freedom. Emperor Zarthon received reports of the human fleet with growing despair. 21 advanced warships was a force that could threaten entire sectors of Imperial space. Worse, the technical superiority that humanity had demonstrated meant that each of their ships was worth dozens of Zephyrian vessels in combat. The rebellion reached the Imperial capital system as news of the human fleet spread through the core worlds. Even on Zephyr Prime itself, enslaved alien populations began sabotaging Imperial installations and attacking their overseers. The empire that had seemed invincible was collapsing from within. Admiral Bennett coordinated with resistance movements across Imperial space, providing them with weapons, supplies, and tactical support. Human engineering teams worked with alien rebels to modify captured Zephyrian equipment and turn it against its former owners. The final blow came when 3 entire sectors of Imperial space declared independence simultaneously, their governments officially allying themselves with Earth and requesting human military protection. The Galactic Empire had lost nearly a quarter of its territory in a matter of weeks. Emperor Zarthon sat alone on his crystal throne, watching the holographic displays that showed his empire dissolving before his eyes. Hundreds of worlds were in open rebellion. His military forces were being defeated by primitive kinetic weapons, and humanity was offering alliance to anyone willing to fight for freedom. The Emperor, who had once ruled 1,000 worlds, now controlled fewer than half that number, and the number was shrinking every day. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, brought down by a species that had emerged from a single blue planet at the edge of known space. Captain Morrison received a message from the Imperial capital, transmitted on an encrypted channel that only the Emperor himself could access. The transmission was brief and carried the weight of historical significance. Human Captain, I am Emperor Zarthon of the Zephyrian Empire. I request immediate negotiations for a ceasefire and possible surrender terms. The Empire acknowledges the military superiority of your species and wishes to discuss ending hostilities. Jake looked around his bridge at the crew that had started this revolution by refusing to surrender to alien bullies. They had proven that humanity would not be conquered or enslaved, and in doing so, they had given hope to every oppressed species in the galaxy. The Galactic Empire that had trembled before humanity's dreadnought was now offering surrender. The balance of power in known space had shifted forever, and the age of human expansion was about to begin. Admiral Crean watched his 50 warships move into perfect attack formation as they approached the lone human vessel. The enemy ship had retreated into an asteroid field, probably hoping the rocky debris would provide some protection against superior numbers. It was a desperate move that would only delay their inevitable destruction. The Leviathan drifted silently among the massive asteroids, its hull almost invisible against the dark stone surfaces around it. Captain Morrison had chosen this battlefield very carefully, knowing that the confined space would limit how many enemy ships could attack them at once. In open space, 50 ships could surround and overwhelm them. Here, the aliens would have to come at them in smaller groups. Navigation Officer Claire Adams sat at her controls with steady hands, ready to pilot their massive ship through the dangerous asteroid maze. She had practiced this maneuver in simulations hundreds of times, but never under combat conditions. One mistake in navigation could crash them into an asteroid just as easily as enemy fire could destroy them. Ryan Cole monitored his engines from the engineering section, making sure they had maximum power available for maneuvering. The quantum drives were running perfectly, giving Claire all the thrust she would need to dance the Leviathan through the asteroid field like a ship 1/10 its size. The aliens had no idea how maneuverable human ships really were. Admiral Creon split his fleet into attack groups, sending them into the asteroid field from multiple directions. His plan was simple and effective. The human ship might be able to handle a few attackers at once, but not concentrated fire from dozens of vessels. He would overwhelm them with superior numbers and firepower. The first wave of Zephyrian ships entered the asteroid field with their weapons charged and shields at maximum power. Admiral Creon expected them to locate and destroy the human vessel within minutes. Instead, massive explosions suddenly tore through space as hidden mines detonated throughout the asteroid field. Jake had spent hours with his engineering teams, placing nuclear mines among the asteroids while they waited for the enemy fleet to arrive. The mines were disguised to look like natural metallic deposits in the rock, invisible to alien sensors until they exploded. 8 Zephyrian ships disappeared in nuclear fireballs before they even saw the Leviathan. Direct hits on multiple enemy vessels, Captain. Their formation is breaking apart, Lisa reported from her tactical station. She was already targeting the confused alien ships with the Leviathan's railguns, preparing to follow up their surprise attack with devastating firepower. Admiral Creon stared in shock as his perfectly organized fleet was thrown into chaos by weapons that should not exist. Nuclear mines were primitive technology that no civilized species had used for centuries. How had these humans managed to make them so effective against advanced Zephyrian sensors and shields? The surviving ships in the first attack wave tried to regroup, but Claire was already moving the Leviathan into a new position. She used the gravity wells of the larger asteroids to slingshot their massive ship around obstacles, appearing behind the alien vessels before they could react to the threat. Weapons Officer Dan Kelly coordinated the devastating railgun barrage that followed. The tungsten slugs moved so fast that the alien ships had no time to evade or adjust their shields. 3 more. Zephyrian vessels were torn apart by kinetic impacts that their energy-based defenses could not stop. Sam Hayes led his fighter squadrons out of hidden launching bays concealed within the asteroids themselves. The small human fighters had been waiting in ambush, powered down and invisible until the moment they struck. 20 fighters against dozens of alien ships seemed like hopeless odds, but the pilots had advantages their enemies did not understand. The Zephyrian fighters were designed for formation combat in open space, relying on coordinated attacks and mutual support. In the confined asteroid field, their superior numbers became a disadvantage as they got in each other's way and could not maneuver effectively. Human pilots had trained for atmospheric combat where obstacles and terrain were normal, parts of every battle. They used the asteroids like hills and valleys, hiding behind rocky cover and striking from unexpected angles. The alien pilots had never faced opponents who could use the environment so effectively. Amy intercepted frantic communications between the Zephyrian ships as their coordinated attack plan fell apart. Ship commanders were calling for support and reporting weapons malfunctions as the human electromagnetic pulse system began targeting their quantum field generators. Helen had refined her EMP weapon during the waiting period, turning it into a surgical instrument that could disable specific enemy systems without affecting others. Instead of the broad-spectrum pulse she had used before, she could now target individual ships and leave them helpless while their neighbors were still fighting. Captain, I'm disrupting their shield generators one at a time. As soon as a ship loses its defenses, our railguns can finish it off. Admiral Creon realized his numerical advantage was disappearing, as human tactics he had never encountered before picked apart his fleet. The asteroid field that should have trapped the enemy was instead protecting them and limiting his ability to bring superior firepower to bear. Mike Torres and his damage control teams were working frantically to repair systems, damaged by the few alien shots that had found their target. The Leviathan's adaptive armor was holding up well against plasma fire, but some energy had still gotten through to damage internal components. The second wave of Zephyrian ships tried a different approach, using their smaller escort vessels to clear the mines, while their heavy cruisers stayed back and provided fire support. It was a sound tactical decision that might have worked against any other opponent. Instead, the human fighters swarmed the alien escorts like angry insects, their small size and maneuverability making them almost impossible targets in the confined space. Sam's pilots struck fast and hard before disappearing behind asteroids, leaving the escort ships burning and helpless. Claire brought the Leviathan around a massive asteroid the size of a small moon, emerging directly behind the alien heavy cruisers. The enemy ships were focused on trying to target the elusive human fighters, and they never saw the Dreadnought until its railguns opened fire at point-blank range. 4 Zephyrian cruisers died in the space of 10 seconds, their hulls torn open by tungsten slugs traveling at relativistic velocities. The kinetic energy of the impacts was so enormous that the alien ship simply disintegrated, their molecular bonds unable to withstand the devastating forces involved. Admiral Creon found himself down to fewer than 20 ships from the 50 he had started with. His perfect formation was gone, his tactical plan was in ruins, and his enemy was using weapons and tactics that made no sense according to everything he had learned about warfare. In desperation, he ordered his remaining ships to ram the human vessel. It was a sacrifice tactic that went against everything in Zephyrian military doctrine, but conventional weapons were proving useless against this impossible opponent. If ramming attacks could damage or destroy the enemy ship, the sacrifice would be worthwhile. Lisa detected the alien ships changing course and increasing speed on her tactical displays. The remaining Zephyrian vessels were abandoning their weapon attacks and heading straight for collision courses with the Leviathan. It was a desperate move that showed how completely their tactical situation had collapsed. "Captain, multiple ramming attacks incoming. They're going to try to destroy us by collision." Jake nodded grimly and gave the order that would end the Battle of the Meridian Asteroids. "Activate point defense systems. Show them what happens when you try to ram a human dreadnought." Hidden weapon systems all along the Leviathan's hull opened up simultaneously, filling space with streams of kinetic projectiles designed to destroy incoming missiles and small craft. The point defense network was so dense that nothing larger than a marble could have survived passage through it. The Zephyrian ships flew directly into a wall of destruction that tore them apart long before they could reach ramming distance. In less than 60 seconds, Admiral Creon's proud war fleet was reduced to scattered debris floating among the asteroids. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in galactic history, a single ship had defeated an entire Zephyrian war fleet. The implications would shake the foundations of the Empire and change the balance of power throughout known space forever. Emperor Zarthon sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the Zephyrian capital world, reading the report that had just arrived from the outer rim systems. The words seemed impossible, but he read them again and again, trying to make sense of what Fleet Commander Vexthala was claiming had happened. The report described a single alien ship that had somehow destroyed an entire Zephyrian patrol fleet. According to Vexthala, the unknown species called themselves humans and possessed weapons technology that made no sense. They used primitive kinetic projectiles that somehow penetrated advanced energy shields, and their ship had armor that absorbed plasma fire instead of being destroyed by it. Zarthon had ruled the Galactic Empire for over 200 years, and in all that time no single ship had ever defeated a full Zephyrian fleet. The Empire controlled 1,000 worlds and had enslaved dozens of intelligent species. Their military doctrine had been perfected through centuries of conquest, and their technology was the most advanced in the known galaxy. The Emperor called for Admiral Creon, his most trusted military commander. Creon had led successful campaigns against 3 different species and had never lost a single battle. If anyone could handle this new threat, it would be him. "Admiral, I have a mission for you. A new species has appeared in the outer systems, and they have somehow destroyed one of our patrol fleets. I want you to take a war fleet and crush them completely. Make sure the entire galaxy knows what happens to anyone who defies the Empire." Admiral Creon studied the battle reports with professional interest. The human weapons seemed crude and outdated, but their effectiveness was undeniable. He had fought many different species over the years, and each one had required slightly different tactics. These humans would be no exception. "Emperor, I will take 50 ships and end this threat quickly. This single human vessel cannot stand against the full might of the Imperial Navy. We will capture their ship and bring their technology back for study. Meanwhile, the UES Leviathan was receiving an urgent message from Earth Command. Captain Morrison had transmitted his report of the first contact battle, and the response from headquarters was swift and serious. Admiral George Bennett himself appeared on the communication screen, his face showing the strain of command. Captain Morrison, your engagement with the alien fleet has changed everything. We are now at war with an interstellar empire, and we need to be ready for their response. I'm ordering all available ships to your position. Hold your ground and wait for reinforcement. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. His decision to fight the Zephyrian fleet had committed all of humanity to a war they might not be able to win. The Empire controlled 1,000 worlds, while humanity had barely begun to explore beyond their own solar system. Ryan Cole was working with his engineering teams to repair the damage from the first battle. The Leviathan had taken some hits despite its advanced armor, and there were systems that needed attention before the next fight. His crews worked around the clock, knowing that their work might mean the difference between victory and defeat. Chief Petty Officer Mike Torres led the damage control teams through the ship's corridors, checking every system and component. Mike had served on military ships for 20 years, and he had never seen technology as advanced as what the Leviathan carried. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, but it was still just one ship against an entire empire. Communications Officer Kate Phillips was busy intercepting and translating Zephyrian military transmissions. The aliens were not trying very hard to hide their communications, probably because they had never faced an enemy capable of understanding their language. Kate was learning disturbing things about the Empire and how they treated conquered species. The Zephyrians ruled through fear and overwhelming force. When they conquered a world, they enslaved the population and stripped the planet of its resources. Species that resisted were often wiped out completely, their worlds left as empty monuments to imperial power. Kate realized that humanity was fighting for more than just their own survival. Dr. Helen Carter was analyzing the alien technology they had captured from the destroyed ships. The Zephyrian approach to engineering was completely different from humanity's. They relied heavily on energy manipulation and quantum field generators, while humans had focused on material science and kinetic systems. Captain, I'm finding some interesting weaknesses in their technology. Their entire military doctrine is based on energy weapons and energy defenses. They've never had to deal with opponents who use different approaches to warfare. Navigation Officer Claire Adams was studying star charts and plotting courses through the local systems. If more alien ships were coming, they would need to choose their battlefield carefully. Claire had trained as both a pilot and a navigator, and she understood how important positioning could be in space combat. The reinforcement fleet from Earth was still weeks away, traveling as fast as their conventional drives could manage. The Leviathan would have to face the Imperial response alone, at least for now. Jake gathered his senior officers to plan their strategy for the coming battle. The aliens are going to send everything they can at us. We need to assume they've learned from the first engagement and won't make the same mistakes again. Our advantage is that they still don't understand how our technology works. Lisa Park had been studying the tactical recordings from the battle, looking for patterns in Zephyrian fleet movements. The aliens fought in rigid formations and relied on coordinated energy attacks. Their tactics were sophisticated but predictable, designed for fighting other energy-based opponents. Captain, I think we can use their tactical doctrine against them. They're trained to fight in formation battles, but our weapons work better at close range. If we can force them to break formation, we can defeat them in detail. Sam Hayes was preparing his fighter squadrons for the next engagement. His pilots had performed well in the first battle, but they would be facing much larger numbers next time. Human fighters were more maneuverable than alien craft, but they could still be overwhelmed by superior numbers. The early warning sensors detected Admiral Kriyon's warfleet while it was still at the edge of the system. 50 Zephyrian warships were approaching in perfect formation, their energy signatures painting space with deadly light. It was the largest military force ever assembled against humanity. Jake stood on his bridge and watched the enemy fleet approach. The Leviathan was alone against impossible odds, but he felt strangely confident. Humanity had survived and thrived by adapting to challenges that seemed insurmountable. This would be just another test of human ingenuity and determination. Admiral Kriyon sent a message demanding immediate surrender. His voice carried the arrogance of centuries of easy victories against primitive opponents. He offered the humans one chance to submit peacefully before his fleet destroyed them. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison. Your offer is rejected. If you want this ship, you'll have to take it from us." Amy closed the communication channel and turned to Jake with a slight smile. "Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from the alien fleet. They're discussing battle plans and weapon configurations. They seem to think this will be an easy victory." Helen had been working on modifications to their weapons based on what she had learned from studying captured alien technology. The electromagnetic pulse that had worked so well in the first battle could be refined and made even more effective against Zephyrian systems. "Captain, I've found a way to enhance our EMP weapons. If I can hit their command ship with a focused pulse, it might disrupt their entire fleet coordination." The alien war fleet moved into attack formation, spreading out across space in a pattern designed to maximize their firepower while minimizing their vulnerability. Admiral Kree-Yan was confident that 50 ships could overwhelm any single opponent, no matter how advanced their technology might be. Jake made his final preparations as the enemy fleet closed in. The asteroid field near their position would provide cover and limit the aliens' ability to use their superior numbers effectively. It was time to show the Galactic Empire that humanity would not go quietly into slavery. Ryan Cole heard Captain Morrison's order over the ship's communication system and felt his heart start racing. He had hoped this day would never come, but he had always known it might. His hands moved quickly across the control panels in the engine room, entering the codes that would transform their ship from Explorer to Predator. "Protocol 7 initiated, Captain. The beast is waking up." Deep inside the Leviathan, massive machines began to hum with power. Hidden compartments opened throughout the ship's hull, and armor plating that had been disguised as simple hull sections began sliding into new positions. The ship that the aliens thought was just a peaceful exploration vessel started revealing its true nature. On the bridge, Jake watched his tactical displays change as new systems came online. Weapon batteries that had been hidden behind false walls extended from the ship's sides. The Leviathan's true size became apparent as sections that had seemed like cargo holds opened up to reveal massive gun turrets. Lisa Park felt a surge of satisfaction as her weapons systems activated. She had been pretending to be just a navigation officer for months, but her real job was much more important. The targeting computers that came online now were more advanced than anything the Earth Defense Force had ever used before. The Zephyrian ships hung in space around the Leviathan, their commanders probably wondering what was happening to the human vessel. Through the communication channels, Amy could hear confused alien voices asking questions and giving contradictory orders. They had expected an easy capture, not whatever was happening now. Fleet Commander Vexithala's voice came through the speakers, filled with anger and impatience. The translation computers made his words clear to everyone on the bridge. "Human vessel, you will cease whatever you are doing and surrender immediately. Your ship appears to be malfunctioning. We will board you and take control." Jake smiled for the first time since the aliens had appeared. "Amy, open a channel to the alien commander." When the connection was established, Jake spoke in a calm, steady voice that carried across space to the Zephyrian ships. "Commander Vexithala, this is Captain Morrison of the Human Defense Forces. Your demand for surrender is rejected. You have 10 seconds to withdraw from this system before we consider you a hostile threat." The alien commander's laughter came through the speakers like the sound of breaking glass. "Foolish human, you are surrounded by the Imperial fleet. Your primitive ship cannot stand against our superior technology. Prepare to be destroyed." The alien ships opened fire all at once, sending streams of bright plasma energy toward the Leviathan. The space around the human ship lit up with deadly fire as 12 alien vessels unleashed their weapons. Any normal ship would have been vaporized in seconds by such an attack. Lisa watched her defensive displays and felt amazed by what she saw. The plasma bolts that should have torn through their hull were being absorbed and deflected by the Leviathan's adaptive armor. The alien energy weapons were designed to burn through metal and destroy electronic systems, but humanity had taken a different approach to defense. Dr. Helen Carter was in the science lab, monitoring the alien attack and analyzing their technology in real time. The Zephyrian weapons used focused energy beams just as human scientists had predicted. What the aliens did not know was that humanity had developed armor specifically designed to handle energy attacks, that the Leviathan's hull was covered with layers of metamaterials that could absorb energy and redirect it harmlessly away from the ship. Instead of trying to block the alien weapons, the armor was feeding on them and growing stronger. Helen watched her instruments with fascination as the ship's defensive systems adapted to each new type of energy the aliens threw at them. Ryan was coordinating the power flow from the engine room, making sure each system had the energy it needed. The quantum drives were operating at maximum efficiency, feeding power to weapons, shields, and armor systems simultaneously. The aliens had no idea how advanced human technology really was. "Captain, all systems are green. We're ready to show them what human engineering can do." Jake nodded to Lisa, giving her permission to return fire. "Light them up, Commander." The Leviathan's weapon systems opened up for the first time in combat, and space erupted with destruction. Instead of energy beams like the aliens used, humanity had perfected kinetic weapons that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The rail guns along the ship's sides began launching tungsten, slugs that moved at significant fractions of light speed. The Zephyrian ships had energy shields, designed to stop plasma weapons and particle beams, but they were completely useless against solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The first salvo from the Leviathan punched through 3 alien ships like they were made of paper, leaving gaping holes in their hulls. Commander Vexathala's confident voice changed to one of shock and fear as he watched his ships being torn apart by weapons he did not understand. The humans were using primitive kinetic projectiles, the kind of weapons that should have been obsolete for thousands of years. How were they so effective against advanced Zephyrian technology? Lieutenant Colonel Sam Hayes was in the fighter bay, preparing his squadron for launch. The pilots under his command were the best humanity had to offer, trained for combat in both atmospheric and space conditions. As the alien ships began to panic and break formation, Sam saw his chance. "All fighters, this is Falcon Leader. Launch when ready. Let's show these aliens how humans fight." 20 small fighters burst from the Leviathan's launch bays, moving with a grace and speed that surprised the alien pilots. Human fighters were designed to be flown by instinct and skill, rather than just computer systems. The pilots could react faster and think more creatively than any artificial intelligence. The Zephyrian fighter pilots had been trained to fight other energy-based fighters in predictable formation battles. They had never faced opponents who flew like atmospheric combat pilots, using tricks that worked in gravity wells and dense atmospheres. Sam's fighters weaved between the larger ships, firing kinetic projectiles that tore through alien hulls. Amy intercepted alien communications as panic spread through their fleet. Ship commanders were calling for reinforcements and reporting weapons that should not exist. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of species over the centuries, and they had never encountered anything like human military technology. Helen made another discovery as she studied the battle data. The alien ships were heavily dependent on their energy-based systems, not just for weapons but for basic life support and navigation. If she could find the right frequency, she might be able to disrupt their entire fleet with an electromagnetic pulse. "Captain, I think I can shut down their remaining ships. Their technology is more vulnerable than they realize." Jake trusted Helen's scientific expertise completely. "Do it, Doctor." The Leviathan's communication array reconfigured itself into a massive electromagnetic pulse generator. Helen had calculated the exact frequency needed to interfere with Zephyrian quantum field generators. When the pulse fired, it spread out in all directions like an invisible wave of destruction. 6 of the remaining alien ships went dark immediately, their power systems failing as the electromagnetic pulse disrupted their energy fields. The proud Zephyrian fleet that had expected to easily capture one primitive human ship was now drifting helplessly in space, most of their vessels either destroyed or disabled. Commander Vexthala found himself in command of only 2 working ships, and those were badly damaged. His confidence had evaporated as he realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong. The humans had weapons and tactics that made no sense according to Zephyrian military doctrine. Jake opened communications with the surviving alien ships one more time. "Commander Vexathala, you are defeated. Withdraw from this system immediately and do not return. Tell your empire that humanity will not be conquered." The 2 remaining Zephyrian ships turned and fled toward the edge of the system, moving as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. For the first time in their history, a Zephyrian fleet had been completely defeated by what they had considered primitive aliens. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Leviathan and watched the stars drift past the massive view screen. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, exploring systems that no human had ever seen before. Jake felt proud of his crew and their mission to find new worlds for humanity to explore, and maybe even settle on someday. The Leviathan was huge, almost 2 miles long and half a mile wide. Most people back on Earth thought it was just an exploration ship, built to study distant planets and collect scientific data. Jake knew better, though. He knew what the Leviathan really was, and he hoped they would never need to show the galaxy its true purpose. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at her communications station, monitoring all frequencies for any sign of intelligent life. She had been doing this job for weeks without finding anything interesting, just the usual background noise of space. Today felt different, though. Amy could sense something was coming, even if she could not explain why. Chief Engineer Ryan Cole was down in the engine room, making sure the quantum drives were running smoothly. The new technology let them travel faster than any ship humanity had ever built before. Ryan had helped design these engines himself, and he was proud of how well they worked. He also knew about the other systems hidden deep inside the ship, systems that most of the crew had never seen. Commander Lisa Park stood next to Jake, studying the tactical displays that showed empty space around them. As the ship's tactical officer, Lisa was always watching for threats. She had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years before joining this mission, and her experience had taught her to never let her guard down. Dr. Helen Carter was in the science lab, analyzing data from the last planet they had surveyed. The world had shown signs of ancient life, but nothing recent. Helen hoped they would find living aliens soon. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, and this mission might finally answer that question. Amy suddenly sat up straight in her chair. Her instruments were picking up something new, something that made her heart beat faster. The signals were artificial, clearly made by intelligent beings. She turned to Jake with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, I'm getting organized transmissions from the next system. They're definitely not natural. Someone is out there." Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, but also the moment he had been dreading. First contact with alien life could go very well or very badly, and there was no way to know which it would be. "Put it on speakers, Amy. Let's hear what they're saying." Strange sounds filled the bridge, unlike anything any human had ever heard before. The alien language was harsh and guttural, with clicking sounds that seemed impossible for human throats to make. Amy worked quickly to run the signals through the translation computers. "I'm getting partial translations, Captain. It looks like military communications. They're talking about patrol routes and defense positions." Lisa moved closer to her tactical station. Her instruments were starting to pick up energy signatures from the direction of the alien signals. Whatever was out there, it was big and it was powerful. "Captain, I'm reading multiple contacts ahead. Large ships, at least 6 of them. They're moving in formation like a military fleet." Jake made a decision that would change everything for humanity. "Take us in slowly. Amy, prepare a first contact package. Use all the standard peaceful greeting protocols. Maybe we can make friends with whoever is out there." The Leviathan moved forward at reduced speed, its massive hull cutting through space toward the alien fleet. Jake could feel the tension on the bridge as everyone realized they were about to make history. They would be the first humans to meet an intelligent alien species. As they got closer, the alien ships became visible on the main screen. They were sleek and dangerous looking, with curved hulls that seemed to flow like water. Strange energy fields surrounded each ship, making them shimmer and glow. Lisa counted 12 ships total, all of them much smaller than the Leviathan but clearly built for war. Amy sent out the peaceful greeting message in multiple languages and mathematical sequences. The response came back quickly, and it was not what anyone had hoped for. The translation computers worked hard to make sense of the alien words. "Captain, they're demanding that we stop and prepare to be boarded. They say we are trespassing in Imperial space and must submit to their authority." Jake felt cold anger building in his chest. Humanity had traveled across the galaxy hoping to make friends, but instead they had found bullies who wanted to give orders. He had seen enough bullies in his life, and he was not about to let aliens push humanity around. The alien fleet commander identified himself as Vexith Thala of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. His voice was full of arrogance and contempt as he spoke to the humans. He made it clear that he considered them primitive creatures who had wandered too far from their home world. "You will surrender your ship immediately. Your species will serve the Empire or be destroyed. You have one of your time units to comply." Lisa's tactical displays lit up with warning signals as the alien ships began moving into attack positions. Their energy weapons were charging up, and Lisa could see that they were preparing to fire. The aliens were not interested in negotiation or peaceful contact. Jake looked around his bridge at the crew he had served with for so long. These were good people who had risked everything to explore the galaxy and expand human knowledge. They did not deserve to be enslaved or killed by arrogant aliens who thought might made right. Amy tried once more to establish peaceful communications, but the aliens cut her off with harsh laughter. They began transmitting images of destroyed ships and conquered worlds, showing the humans what happened to species that defied the Zephyrian Empire. The moment had come for Jake to make the hardest decision of his life. He could surrender and hope the aliens would be merciful, or he could fight back and risk everything on humanity's hidden strength. As he looked at the alien ships surrounding them, Jake made his choice. Ryan, initiate Protocol 7. It's time to show these bullies what humanity is really made of.